Hi guys, this is Debbie with Debbie J's Crafting Corner. Welcome to the next video in my Christmas crafting series for 2020. Today I'm making some heat embossed cards using a watercolor background that is super easy to create. For this card, I'm going to use some Arteza Real Brush pens, again, for doing a little watercoloring. And I'm also going to be using this stamp set from Creative Stamping. It's an older set, but to be honest, I've had it in my stash a while and haven't used it. But look at how lovely those images are. So basically, I'm going to be putting down a watercolor wash and then do some stamping with these guys once it's dry. Also, I really like this, my Tim Holtz mat. This section is perfect for using as a palette because I can see the colors that I'm adding to decide, what I wanted to do. So I think I'm going to I'm thinking I'm going to probably do one of the ornaments, not sure which one yet. And I'm thinking I want to do kind of a greenish color in the background. So I'm going to take out the two different greens and I'm going to take out the blues because I think I might use some of that and just get a little variation of color. I'm going to go ahead and start with those. But before I do that, I'm going to first wet my canvas, my watercolor paper rather. I'm going to go ahead and wet this down just using a spray bottle with some water. So I'm going to grab some of that darker green and just put that in, and of course I don't have enough of that color down. So I'm starting off with this nice light wash of green, and as you can tell, that light green really doesn't put a lot of pigment down. I've got enough water in there so it's not real heavy. I am needing to get some more onto my palette so that I can try to get a little bit of that warmer green tone to show up on the paper. So I'm basically just covering the entire panel with that wash of green. So I'm going to go ahead and tip my watercolor over and prop it up a little bit so that some of the color will try to just come down on its own. And I'm just, like I said, just doing a light wash of that, just covering the entire panel. Now I'm going to grab another a purple marker. I'm going to bring a little bit of purple into the color as well. Of course, I want to wait until the green's dry before I do that because otherwise it's going to look a little bit like mud. Don't want that, so I'm putting down some more green onto my palette, both the light green and the dark green, and then those blues that I took out of the pack earlier, the teal and dark purplish blue, and then I'm going to go ahead and start adding some of those in, and those colors are a bit more vibrant. Also, I didn't add a lot of extra water in those, so that's one of the reasons why they're showing up on the paper more. Just a tip, when you're using watercolor paper, watercolors of any type, the more water that you put in there, the lighter the color is going to show. It's not going to show as much of that pigment that you're wanting, but that does create a nice soft look because sometimes we don't really want a dark color behind it. We want just something, I don't know, just a light tone. And then I'm going to be doing a little bit of layering of the colors. So this is just the first one, so it's just kind of a light base coat. And then I'm going to hit it with my heat tool once I get enough of that light tone in, including some of those purples. So I'll go ahead and hit that with my Ranger heat tool and go ahead and dry the panel pretty good, and then I'll add some more color. So now I'm going to come back in with those same colors now that the panel is pretty much dry. I'm going to bring in some more of that dark green and some of the lighter green, and then I'm going to also go ahead and do some of the blues as well. But I'm not touching the pens to the paper because that's going to put too much pigment, and I do want a soft wash. So this second layer, you can see, is adding a bit more color. We got a little bit more of a vibrant green. Again, it is a really soft color in the background, and that is what I'm looking for, but I didn't want a white background. I wanted something with a little bit of color to it. So this is really, really easy to do, and you don't have to take nearly as long as what I'm taking on these. You could go ahead and put more pigment down as you go along. So I'm going ahead and drying this one, and then I'm going to go back in again with those colors. This time I'm not going to use as much water, and it's going to be on a mostly dry canvas. Now, one of the things I like about doing a background like this is that you can just play and see how the colors in the water react to one another. What I'm doing here is I'm bringing in a little bit of darker colors, a little bit more of the pigment on there, and it's leaving some streaks, and I really do like the way that this turns out when it's behind something. Now, if this was the main focal point, I don't think that I would like it so much because it is a bit streaky and not blended, but sometimes that's what you're looking for. So I'm going ahead and drying the panel, and then we're going to start putting together the card. So I'll go ahead and remove that masking tape. Now this is some masking tape that's from Dollar Tree, so it's not really that sticky, so it worked out pretty good for holding down my watercolor panel. I think I am going to switch to the blue painter's tape because I think that'll work better. And I'm also wanting to make sure that this is really dry because I'm going to be using embossing powder on there. So I'm going to go ahead and test it out first and see whether or not it's dry enough by just sprinkling some embossing powder on. And this end, it looks pretty good, but I want to make sure it's consistent all the way across. So I'm going to go ahead and put some more on the other end to see how that one does. And I'm seeing that it is sticking a bit, so I'm going to go ahead and use my heat tool on it again real quick and see if I can get that a little bit drier. If it's not too dry, that's perfectly fine too. It just makes it easier to work with if it's good and dry. So I'd say that that is pretty good. At least it's good enough. I'm going to be using an anti-static powder tool on it anyway, and that's going to help take care of any of that additional problems. Now I'm going to put this into my Tonic stamp platform, and the DIY sticky grid that I've got in here is one that I really need to restick because it's not really working as well for holding the card panel down. I'm going to put some tape on both sides to give it a little extra stability. Okay. Okay, so that should stay in place. And this panel is there. It's actually 7.5 inches long, so that would be 3 3/4 is the midpoint. So I'm just going to draw a light line there, and that's going to be where I'm going to cut when I'm all said and done. And since there's a 1/4 inch here, it's going to be right around 3.5 inches. But at least now I know where it is that my stamping needs to be. And then we've also got these other stamps that are in that same set. So I could go ahead and stamp all. I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to stamp all at once. Have 2 different designs. I'm going to use the star and the circle. And then 2 of the different 2 of the sentiments. I think I have that straight. Actually, this one is slightly off. There are also grid marks on the lid, so you can see whether or not you've got it straight. So that is a really good part of the tool. I really like that. Makes it a lot easier when you don't get things on there straight the first time around. So now I'm going to take my EK Success anti-static powder tool and just cover this thing. There we go. Cover this thing with as much powder as I can do, because I don't want to ruin that background. Now, I'm going to take my VersaMark and stamp those and add ink to each of those stamps. Okay, and I can see some of it, but I want to make sure I've got a good stamping, good impression. So I'll go ahead and stamp it one more time, adding some ink again. Wish me luck. Trying not to touch anywhere that I might want to use on the card, because I can sometimes leave finger marks on there that the embossing powder wants to stick to. Okay, that's looking good so far. Let's get the rest of this. Oh, that looks lovely. The embossing powder that I'm using today is the same gold from Recollections that I've been using a lot lately. I've had it in my stash for quite a while, and like I've been saying, use what you have. You don't have to go and buy new stuff. I mean, I really do love the WOW embossing powder, but I really want to use this up. And to be honest, it works really well. The downside is that I have to remember to use my anti-static powder tool. Otherwise, the embossing powder goes in places that I don't want it to. Okay, that side is all nice and heated, so let me turn it around if I can hold on to it, and let's heat up that pretty gold star. Okay, so there we go. That's the background and the two images stamped. So go ahead and clean this stuff up, and then I can cut that down and put them onto a couple card bases. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and take out my 9-inch paper trimmer from Fiskars and trim off all of the white excess real quick. And then I'm going to go ahead and cut on that line in the center. So now I've got card fronts for 2 cards. So first I have to go ahead and make my standard A2 size card bases. As usual, I'm using Michael's Recollections 110 pound 300 GSM cardstock and scoring at 4 1/4. Then I flip the paper over, push it up against the edge, and fold it with both pieces touching that edge. What I found is a lot of times paper that you receive from the store is not actually cut exactly at 8 1/2, and that's fine. We're just needing it to be approximate, and the reason for the scoring is to make it fold easier and get a nice crisp edge. But because I use the part that I had scored on the outside, I very, very rarely have any of my cards crack. Got a couple of options here. I can do flat on the panel with some good double-sided adhesive tape. I could use some foam of some fashion, or I could also mount it. on, put a mounting layer on there, give it another border. I think the white border looks great with these though, so I'm going to just leave it as is, but I do think I want a little dimension. In my stash, I've got some foam panels that I've had for basically ever because I usually use foam tape. So I do have some greens though, so I'm going to go ahead and pull out a couple of those little panels I've got in there, and I'm going to cut these down. Like I said, I'm wanting to use up what's in my stash before I go back and buy more stuff. So using up these colored foam pieces where I can is a good idea. Now since this measures right at 5 inches, I'm going to want my foam panel to be a little bit smaller, so I'm going to do it, I think I'm going to go just under 4 3/4. And then since this part, widthwise, it's right around 3 1/2, I'm going to do the same thing, go just over 3, so I'm cutting off about 3/8. And that should give us, that gives us pretty good coverage across the entire back. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing with the second one. Because these don't have adhesive on there, I'm just going to add some art glitter glue to it. Does mean that it needs a little bit of time to dry, and you want to make sure you get all the way to the edges. And then I'm just going to put that in the center of the back of my panel. And then I just put my phone on it to let it dry. And then I'll go ahead and do the same thing on the other one. Go all the way to the edge. And then I'll put that one under my phone. This one has had enough time to dry because art glitter glue does dry really fast, which is awesome. I'll go ahead and put the adhesive on the back of this, and then I'll adhere it to the front of my card base. And because it is liquid glue, you can position that. You get a chance to kind of move it around a little bit to make sure it's right where you want it. Then I'm going to put my phone on that one to let it dry. And then do the same on this one. And then I'll put my phone on that one. And I'm going to add a few little gems, and I think I'm going to also add some of these little snowflakes. Don't know if I want to put any, no, the blues are going to be too much, I think. Yeah, the blues are too dark. So I'm going to add some of these white ones. Now they are real light, but I think it'll be just the right touch. I'm grabbing my Marvy jewel picker so I can get everything positioned just right. And lucky for us, art glitter glue does dry clear, so that's perfect. I'm going to go ahead and add those couple little gems in the center of each of those little snowflakes. Going with these tiny ones. So that one is all done with those little white snowflakes. I added the same embellishments to the second card, and that finishes up these cards for today. Thank you so much for dropping by. I hope that you've been inspired to do some more Christmas crafting, and I would love to see what you create. So come join my Facebook group, Crafting with Debbie, and show us your creations. I've left a link down in the description box below. And if you create anything using ideas from one of my Christmas crafting videos, please be sure to post a picture on social media and tag me at hashtag DebbieJ's Crafting Corner and at hashtag DJCC Christmas 2020. You can also see all of my Christmas crafting videos for 2020 by clicking on hashtag DJCC Christmas 2020 down in the video title. Here are some other videos that you may be interested in. Thank you so much for dropping by, and remember, if I can make it, you can too.